Hey guys, welcome back to our Monday chit chat. I feel like it's been a while. I'm nervous. I haven't done this in like 2 weeks. I'm sorry I did miss last week. I think it's because our flight got in from Canada maybe 12 hours before Monday, and so I was severely jet lagged, tired. I was not in any sort of state to have a proper conversation. So we skipped it, but I'm so happy to be back. I'm so happy to see you guys, and yeah, thanks for being here. I thought I would talk a little bit about our trip to Canada, although I won't dwell on it too much because Jean and I did a whole video on culture shock. I have a video of my time in Canada that's coming, so I'll just talk about maybe some of the highlights. And then I thought I could tell you a little bit about my week last week, and then we'll get into the questions that you guys submitted on my Instagram, which I just can't wait to get to because I think they're so good, and I want to answer them right away, but I'm holding myself back. Thank you guys so much for submitting them. If you aren't following me on Instagram, you definitely should, because every Sunday I put a little question box on my Instagram story so you guys can submit any questions, comments, topics that you want me to talk about. It can be anything about my life in Paris, my travels, Paris in general, if you have any questions. I love it. I love seeing your questions. They're always so good, and I just appreciate hearing from you guys. I don't know, it's a big part of why I love doing this Monday podcast so much, is I love having what feels like a real conversation with you and being more authentic and less scripted, I guess. So yes, that is the agenda. Let's get to Canada. Jean and I ended up going to Canada for about 10 days. The point of the trip was to surprise my dad for his 60th birthday. And so everyone in my family knew except for my dad, and you'll see his reaction to the surprise in the video that I have coming. But it was very nice. It was very wholesome. That's how I would describe it. And it just felt really good to see my family and friends. I always say this, but the thing I miss most about home is the normal moments, that feeling of normality that you have in your relationships with your family and friends. And when I go home, I get to feel that again, and it's amazing. So we didn't do a lot of sightseeing. We mostly spent the time with my family and my friends. And yeah, it was amazing. I will say that another thing too that I love about going home is that my brother and my sister still live with my parents. And so when I go home, it feels very nostalgic, and I look forward to feeling like I'm 17 again and we're living all together in one house. There's just something about fun family chaos that I love and I miss, and it's just awesome to come home and have everyone all together, you know, for 2 weeks. I'll go through a couple highlights of my trip. We went to the Ice Wine Festival in Niagara, which was so much fun. My dad rented a van so that we could drive down as a family. I think there were 6 of us that went, so he rented this like boat of a car so we could all drive down and, you know, listen to music and talk and stuff on the way. And we also went with my aunt and my uncle, so it was just like this big family party, going through the wineries, doing these tastings. It was just a really nice experience, and Niagara is very beautiful. My favorite winery that we visited was called Sue Ann Staff Estates Winery. She was just so amazing. She was clearly passionate, she is clearly passionate about winemaking, and the estate has been in her family for over 200 years. It really is just like this Canadian gem of a winery, and I loved listening to everything she had to say. And so I actually ended up writing to her after the visit and asking her if she'd be willing to participate in a project, kind of like what I did with George in Greece, where I would help, of course, in anything she needed, but also document and film the production, the events, the day-to-day that goes on at the winery. So we'll see. She hasn't answered yet. I haven't lost hope, but I think that'd be a really interesting walk of life to document, you know, like a local Ontario winery. Just let me know what you think. Let me know if you would watch that. I'd be curious. So that was really fun. And then I thought maybe I can go through a highlight that I had with every person in my family. So for my sister, it's gonna be spending like half a day at the outlet mall shopping. I know that sounds so basic, but again, it's just the normal things that I miss doing with my family, and really feeling those relationships settle back into into a normal relationship that you would have with your sister. Like I wish we could go to the mall, you know, once in a while on a Saturday or go for a walk, but we can't since we both live so far. So it really is nice to have those moments again. For my brother, I loved also being there for his birthday. His birthday is also in January, and I made him a cinnamon roll cake. Cinnamon rolls are his favorite thing in the world to eat. And we also went to this sort of adult playground called Activate with him and his girlfriend and Jean, my best friend. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this place before. I'll put a picture on the screen so you know what I'm talking about. But it's like this 18 plus playground. It's a bunch of different rooms that are dark, and you have a bunch of different games that are illuminated via these fluorescent lights. And so every room is different. You have all these different activities, and you just run around and play like a kid would, but because it's 18 plus, you're not there with children. It was really fun. It was a lot of teamwork. It was a little bit sporty and athletic as well. So yeah, that was really great. With my dad, I have to say I loved getting Jean's first pair of skates. He bought Jean's first pair of skates, which is so cute. Again, I documented it. You guys will see that in the video that I have coming. With my grandma, we ended up going for a coffee one morning and then visiting where my grandpa is buried, and I really liked sharing that with Jean, and I also just liked having a wonderful morning with my grandma. I thought that was, yeah, really special. And with my mom, we did so much. We went on a hike with Jean. We also did a lot of party planning and grocery shopping, and I think that's what I liked most about doing with my mom when I went back to Canada this time, which again, just sounds so basic, but my mom and I are very similar in the sense that we love to host parties, we love to throw parties, plan parties, cook for parties, all that. And we never get to do that anymore because we don't live in the same house. And so it just felt very special to be working together and planning for my dad's 60th, and yeah, it was special. I don't know, it's hard. I feel like I'm not using enough adjectives in this video because everything feels special. It's how I want to describe everything. It just feels so good when I go home. I will say as well, there was two things that I wrote down that I wanted to talk about with you guys. Two things that I noticed or that I felt when I was back home in Canada. And the first one is Jean and I went for quite a few runs on this trip. We really tried to stay active. I am terrified of losing any cardio or fitness that I've built up in the past month since I was off for 3 months and everything. So we really made an effort to go for runs. And as we were going for these runs and we were running by or through these neighborhoods and by all of these homes, it really made me realize how much I miss having a house. This sounds maybe dumb to say, but to see all of these houses with big, beautiful windows and a front lawn and a backyard and the red brick and the white window trims, it just looked so homey, so welcoming. And not only do I want that kind of aesthetic, you could say, but I also just imagined all of the space. I'm like, can you imagine I had my own room to put my YouTube equipment, a place to film that is in the kitchen / living room, a backyard to have a garden. I was thinking about all these things and also thinking that I wanted to create all of that with Jean. I want to have a home with Jean. It made me realize, as much as I love living in Paris, having the tiny apartment, the small living space really does over time feel claustrophobic. And the more I get older, the more Jean and I become serious. I just realized that I think our home is not going to be in a place like Paris with a small apartment. We really do need, I think, the space to build what we want to build. And on that note as well, as we were going on this run, we weren't just passing these houses and these yards and these gardens, but also these big, beautiful trees, the pine trees the oak trees, the birch trees, the squirrels, the birds, the blue sky. It was just a literal breath of fresh air that we don't have in Paris. And I'm not trying to knock Paris, because Paris has its own architectural wonder. Like, all of the buildings here are beautiful and old, and they give off like almost a magical energy. It's just, you don't have the space, you don't have the nature that you do in a city like Toronto. And then the second thing that I noticed is that this time it was a lot harder for me to reintegrate and to feel the normal relationships that I have with my friends and my family. And what I mean by this is that I have my life in Paris, right? I have my friends, I have my social groups, my work, my hobbies. I have a life here. And so I have to always remember that people in Canada also have their lives in Canada without me. And because for me, when I travel home, the relationships that I have with people pause, like they go on and off, and nothing changes. I expect to find things the way I left them when I visited like 6 months prior, but it's just so unrealistic to do that, because people form their own relationships with other people, people's relationships change. And so going back to Toronto and going back to those relationships that I have with my friends and my family is sometimes challenging, because things aren't the same as when I left them. That's just reality. And so finding my way back to normality is sometimes challenging. I can feel left out, or I can feel excluded sometimes, and it's not a reflection of how people treat me. It's just a reflection of how, when you choose to live away from your friends and family, a consequence of that is, on both ends, living your own lives, building your own lives, and really having to make that effort to connect, not just when you're apart, but also when you're together. Wow, that feels so philosophical. So yeah, that was a quick summary of my trip to Canada, although I guess it wasn't that quick. It was a solid 10 minutes. Sorry. I hope it wasn't too much. It's a lot on Canada, I know, especially when my channel's focused on Paris. I have one more video on Canada coming, but I really think you guys will like that one, and then I promise I'm done for now. We'll be focusing more on Europe and on Paris. Okay, yeah, so let's talk about my week last week. Not too much happened. I got a haircut. I don't know if you guys can tell. This is not the greatest moment for me to show that off, because I'm on like day 5 or 6 of unwashed hair. So maybe next time I wash it, I'll point it out again and you guys will see. But it's definitely shorter. Oh, it's definitely shorter. And I also have bangs, which I pinned back because, again, my hair's a little bit dirty, so they're not hanging beautifully, but I do like it. I think it looks very cute. And she had to cut a lot off the ends because they were so dead. I think the last time I went for a haircut was like a year ago, because I normally go when I'm in Canada, because I've always been so nervous to find a hairdresser in Paris. Nervous, not just to find one, but also about the price. And one day last week, I was literally just walking down the street in Paris, and I crossed this very natural looking hairdresser. She had plants and vines hanging all over the place. The inside just looked like all the furniture and mirrors and accessories had come from a vintage yard sale, and I was like, that is my style. So I literally just walked in, and she was doing someone's hair, and I was like, hi, can I book an appointment, or should I call? I don't want to bother you. She's like, oh my god, yes, like let's book, no worries. And I specifically, when I look for a hairdresser, I look for someone who will allow me to just show up with my own cleaned hair and either cut it dry or just rinse it and cut it wet. I don't let anybody use any products on my hair that are not the ones I either make for myself or the ones I use. I went through a very challenging process when I switched over from bottle shampoo to the all-natural bar soap shampoo that I use. A lot of people refer to it as like the purge. When you make that switch, your scalp is on fire. For me, it was like 2 or 3 months, because you're making that change from fragranced chemical products to 100% natural. So typically people do go through a purge, and I just never want to experience that again. So I always ask, before I book an appointment, I ask if the hairdresser's okay not to use anything on my hair, not to blow dry it, no heat, like literally just cut it. And I never ask for a price reduction or anything like that. I just don't want heat or chemical products on my hair, and she was absolutely open to doing that. She even gave me like €5 off, which was nice of her. So yeah, I'm ranting about this haircut. I'm not ranting, I'm talking about this haircut like it's some huge event, but it really wasn't. And I look forward to showing you that when my hair is a little bit more clean. I also had a little Galentine's Day party with some of my friends from basketball. These are like my closest friends from the basketball team. They're all boys because I was on a boys basketball team, and it was obviously so nice to see them. I made them dinner. I did an olive oil tasting for them, and then we played board games until 2 or 3 in the morning, and it was just obviously nice to catch up. We were also lamenting a little bit about the basketball drama, because I know I've told you guys a little bit, but it just every week it progressively gets worse and worse. And we were just like lamenting on the fact that we all met 3 years ago, and it felt, we felt unstoppable. Like our friendship was so close. It was so special to practice with each other, to play with each other like 3 times a week. It felt amazing to have such a close connection with people. And now 3 years into it, things are kind of all messed up for us when it comes to basketball. So we see each other less, and we have less of those heartfelt team moments. But either way, we are all still making an effort to see each other, which is good, and I really do regard them as some of my closest friends in Paris. So that was really nice. And then also for David, who is part of this friend group, I talk about David sometimes. I don't know if you guys will remember him, but I will put a picture on screen so you guys know who David is. But David has a podcast. It's called Ambition Publique, and it basically is a podcast dedicated to talking about the public sector in France, like working as a public servant, the challenges, the contest you have to pass, the jobs. It just is basically a podcast for people to understand more about what it means to be a public servant and how you get there. And so anyways, he started this podcast a year ago, and I don't know, as a friend group, we've always supported him. And for his first launch party a year ago, I helped him make the cake, and I did the videos and some of the photos. And so this was like the 2nd year anniversary. It was very exciting to go and support him again. And I also did the photos and a couple videos as well. So that was nice. It was also nice to be with my friends celebrating David. And I think I had one more thing. Oh my gosh, I think that's it. I think that's everything on my list. I need to do a better job of keeping track of what happens during my week. I think last week was just so hectic. I didn't have a lot going on because we're unpacking and recovering from the jet lag, which took so long. So forgive me for that. Also, your questions were so good. I just wanted to get them. So let's start with those. The first question is from Fatima, and she asks, how much money does a tourist need for a 3-day trip in Paris? Love your videos. I love this question. I love when you guys ask me Paris questions as well. Giving my opinion is one of my favorite things to do. So I would say that the amount of money that you need for a trip to Paris is definitely going to depend on your budget and what your goal is. If your goal is to stay in 5-star hotels, to eat at the finest French restaurants, to do every single museum in the city, then I mean, it's going to be a lot of money. But there's also ways to budget, right? Like you can find really good, less expensive restaurants. You can find free museums, free expositions, but also paid expositions. So let's find a middle ground here. I think that an average hotel in Paris at this time of year, again, it's like a whole other ballpark for summer months because those are the heaviest tourist months in the city. And also we have the Olympics being hosted in July, where accommodation, for example, is around €1,000 a night. So right now in Paris, if you're coming for 3 days, I would say that your middle ground hotel is going to cost you about 150 to 175 euros per night. Even Airbnbs are going to be expensive. Just factually, hotels in Paris are very expensive. If you're trying to save money on a hotel, I would definitely recommend that you stay in the outer arrondissements, like 11, 12, 19, 20, you're a little bit outside of the city center, but it's easy to commute in on either bike or metro, and you're obviously gonna save a lot of money. I am gonna do a series on hotels in Paris coming up, so you'll have more insights on that soon. In terms of food, I would say if you're looking for average dinner prices not really good, but an average good French restaurant, like a bistro or even a bouillon, you're looking at between, I would say, 25 to 35 euros. Obviously, you can pay more money for a more bougie experience, a more touristy trap restaurant, but I think my point of reference will always be my favorite restaurant in Paris, which is called Le Mihat. It's in the 18th, and typically I will spend about 35 euros having a dinner there. Lunch will be a little bit cheaper. You're looking maybe at 20, 25 euros, and then breakfast, you have like a coffee and a croissant for 4 or 5 euros. So I would count maybe 100 euros per day if you're eating out all meals. It's also really easy to go to a boulangerie and pick up a sandwich for lunch and just have a picnic along the Seine, and that'll cost you more like 10 euros. So again, there's definitely ways to save money. And then when it comes to activities, you have so many free museums in Paris. If I remember, I will leave the link down below to where you can find the list of all the free museums. My favorite one is probably going to be the Petit Palais. I also love the Victor Hugo House. All of that, like not all of that, those are only 2, but there is a significant amount of free museums to visit in Paris. And then there's also paid ones, like the Louvre. I think if you've never been, it's important to go. I think the tickets are around 30. So I would probably count between 15 and 30 euros a day on activities. So in total, if you're looking at hotel, food, and activities, you're probably gonna spend somewhere around, this is so high, 250, 300 euros a day. Oh my God, that's so much money. That feels like a lot of money to spend, but yeah, it's the accommodation. I think the accommodation is always going to be expensive in Paris. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. I feel like I've just rambled for 5 minutes, but let me know. Let me know in the comments and I can do a better job of explaining. I also will just quickly plug my Paris itineraries, which I try to give you sort of 24-hour itineraries from a local's perspective. And this is definitely going to be more budget friendly because in my daily life, I'm more budget friendly. So I would definitely recommend those as well if you want to cut down your costs. Okay, next we have Kareem who says, what do you enjoy most about living in Paris? Whew. Okay, so I think what I enjoy most is the fact that Paris is a city that never sleeps. No matter where you go in the city, no matter what time or what day, there will always be somewhere to shop, an activity to do, a performance to see, a delicious meal to be had. Really, that was what I miss most. I did my master's in the south of France in a smaller town called Aix-en-Provence, and that's something that I missed most when I was studying there. I loved studying in the south, but you just didn't have access to the plethora of cultural activities, performances, the thrift shops, the stores, even the grocery stores, even the markets as well. You just didn't have the same quantity of activities. And because I'm someone who is very social, I'm always out and about doing things, I really appreciate being in a city that has so much going on. And I will add on to that, I also really love the transportation in Paris. It's such an accessible city. I do a lot of biking, but the metros are very good. You have the RERs, which are trains that connect you to areas further out of the city. It's all very affordable. It's all very accessible, and accessible financially. I mean, and also, I guess accessible. I will say it's not accessible physically. That's one peeve I have with the Paris metro system, is that there's mostly stairs. You don't have elevators and escalators. I feel like I should add that point in. But in terms of time and money, I do think the metro system is great here as well. Next question from Sharon, who says, will you get married in Paris or Canada? And the answer is neither one. I feel like it would be very unfair to ask Jean's family to fly to Canada for a wedding. I also think it would be unfair to ask my family to fly to France for a wedding. We'll probably just have 2 parties in both countries when we visit. And I've pitched this idea to Jean. So far he's on board, but I really do want to get married in Greece. You guys are probably sick of hearing me talk about Greece, but it really was a moving experience when I traveled there. I loved the island of Crete. I loved the people of Crete so much, and I just want to share that with our families, and I want to be married in such a positive, wonderful, welcoming space with Jean. I say I because Jean doesn't have a lot of opinions on where we get married. I think that he obviously wants to have his family and friends there, and that's like going and having a wedding in Canada is not accessible at all to his family, some of which have not even flown on an airplane. So yes, no official marriage in France or Canada, but definitely in Greece. And then what I want to do for our potential Greek wedding is get married at the church and the restaurant that I would have showed you guys in my big Greece video. It's where we had the really good lamb, and we had the chef that did a whole tour of his kitchen for me. I even talked to the owner of the restaurant. I was like, oh, could I get married here? He was like, absolutely. I'll give you a good deal. We'll get the best shepherd to find the best meat. I was like, okay, sounds good. So I really want to have our ceremony and our celebration at that wedding, which is on the top of a mountain, which is so cool. And then I'd like to have everybody stay in the city of Myrtos, which is just a beautiful seaside city, very charming, beautiful sunsets, beautiful beach, beautiful people. And then as well, of course, no trip to Crete would be complete without having an activity for our wedding guests, which would be to go and do a tasting and a tour at George's farm. I obviously want to share that with the people that I love most because it was so impactful for me, but also George is such a fun guy and his products are so amazing. I just think it'd be a great experience for everyone to have as well. So all that to say, I hope that Jean and I will get married in Greece. And then the next question from Sharon is, have you ever thought about moving to Greece full-time every single day of my life? I dream of Greece at least 2 or 3 times a week. I'm sure you guys can gather from how much I talk about it from the videos that I made about my experience, is that the people in Greece, the people of Crete, were just so welcoming and warm. I feel like they're very similar to my personality, and so it was so easy to connect with them and have a really good experience. The island is beautiful. The beaches are beautiful. It just, I think about this all the time, but I mean, I kind of have my life here. I have my business here, my apartment here. My partner is here. Like, Jean works in Paris. He can't just get up and leave and work in Greece and stuff. So I don't know. Honestly, when it comes to moving anywhere, I will say that I'm not someone who stays a place for long. My whole life, outside of Toronto, where I was raised up until 17 and I left to go study in Ottawa, I've consistently never stayed anywhere for more than 3 years. I typically move every 2 years. Paris is the city that I've lived in the longest outside of my childhood in Toronto. And so I'm really not someone who, let me rephrase that. I always say that we don't have enough lives to live. No, I say it better. I think I say something like, there aren't enough lives to do everything in this world that I want to do. There's so many places I want to see. There's so many places I want to live. There's so many countries I want to visit and experiences that I want to experience, that I just have a hard time staying in one place for a long period of time. And I do feel that in Paris, I am getting a little bit restless. I feel like I've been here long enough to love the city, to know the city, but I do feel like I am very close to the point where I want to move on. I don't know if I will. I don't know where I will. I really don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I will move at some point, and Greece is an option for sure. I mean, honestly, I really do dream about it all the time. I just have so many positive memories. Alex says, you are awesome. Thank you, Alex. And then Sandy Rossman says, no question, just a thank you for sharing your family with us. I see why you miss home. You're welcome. I love sharing my family on my YouTube channel because I think they're the greatest. I think they're so funny. They're my favorite people on this world, and I love to share them. I think as well, you guys can maybe tell from everything I've said and even my content, is that even though my channel was initially created about Paris and my life in France, I do want to branch out from that. I really do want to film more documentary style videos, like I was talking about the winery in Ontario. I don't want my identity as a YouTuber to be tied or chained to Paris, and I think an important part of that is sharing my personality and my personal life to a certain extent with you guys. I think that's just how it works when you want to be a more general YouTuber that just doesn't focus on one topic. So yeah, it's a mix of things. I think it's important to share that with you guys, and I love my family. Sorry, there's a dog barking in the background, and again, it's like, I don't know if it's just my apartment. I think it's the fact that we only have single paned windows, but I hear everything and it's so distracting. I need to start wearing headphones, or again, it's a problem of space. I don't have a proper area to film. I'm filming in our living room. So yes, I think that is the end of today's little catch up. I hope it was okay. Like I said, I am a little bit nervous. When I take a week off of being in front of the camera, I get nervous to be in front of it again, and it's kind of hard to film. I don't know why. Maybe I'm shy. I don't know. It's just challenging. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this catch up, and I will see you tomorrow because I have an old sort of archive video from my time in Greece that I want to post. I just figured it's like bonus content because I'm trying to post on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and so I figure if I sprinkle in a little old Greece video on a Tuesday, then there's no harm. So if you do want to see that, you can tune in tomorrow, and then hopefully by Thursday I will have the Canada video done, which is very exciting. So yeah, hope you guys have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one.